Hey everybody, it's the final star rating video for Whizbang's workshop from me. We have Warlock, we have Warrior, then we have the neutrals. I'm also going to cover the new cards that are entering core, but specifically the ones that are actually completely brand new. I'm going to cover those 4 cards. And then I'm also going to cover the event cards as well at the end. We've obviously seen some of the event cards already, but I want to give my opinion on what those cards are going to be like going into the next set, as they've really only been in standard, for a week or 2 at this point anyway. Alright, first off we have Warlock, and oh boy, do we have a story to tell. So, before I do these star ratings, I try to build decks out of the new cards with the standard set, and then I try and have a good estimation of how I think it will do compared to the current roster of decks. That is easy when the core set isn't rotating out and 3 sets aren't rotating out with it. So it's very volatile, right? Currently the state of Hearthstone, and people have got varying different opinions. I was trying to put a deck together with all these big demons, the table flip, make it like a handlock deck, and basically I came to the conclusion that it's not possible. I came to the conclusion that I think there's actually possibly 5 decks you can make out of these cards, 4 or 5 decks. I think you're going to have something equivalent to Cube Lock, which is Queen Lock. So you'll use the Wretched Queen and you'll keep triggering the Death Rattles. And that's going to be one of the decks. There is also another big demon whose name escapes me. I'm so confused by Warlock that I've actually opened an alternate window on a separate monitor for me to get the card names. Enhanced Dreadlord, I think, will also get into this deck from standard. And you will trigger their Death Rattles, you'll get big taunts, you'll get lifesteal, and you'll just make your opponent's life a misery. In that deck, I think you're going to play Nemsy. I think you would be trying to look at playing Endgame. You'd be looking at playing the Wretched Queen, Crane Game, Curse Campaign, Tabletop Role Player, or maybe Malefic Rook. I think they were all intended to go into this type of Cube Lock or Queen Lock archetype. I don't think it's going to work. Simply put, I just don't think it is enough value. If you compare this deck back to old Cube Lock, one of the big things about old Cube Lock was you would eventually play Gul'dan as the hero, and he would summon back all the demons, and you would just generate this incredibly sticky, horrible board to deal with, and you could go face with it. I am aware that we do have Doomguard back as well for some charging on top of all of these demons. You could potentially Nemsy into Doomguard. I don't think it's an awful deck, I just don't think it's going to be fantastic. So I think Endgame, Nemsy, and Wretched Queen are all 3 stars. I think they're going to go into a tier 3 deck, and I think that's where Queen Lock is going to sit. Curse Campaign I've given 2 stars to. I think it will see some testing in the Queen deck. I also think it'll see some testing in a Wheel of Death deck, but I think it'll be determined that it's just far too slow. So yeah, I've given it 2 stars, some testing, but then when we dropped. Crane Game, I've given 1 star to, same with Tabletop Role Player. I think you don't need to run both Crane Game and Nemsy. I think it's too expensive. And if you're going to try and put Malefic Rook in this deck as well, then your Crane Game could actually pull out 9 mana worth of demons from your deck, which is okay, but it's a pretty weak turn for a 9 mana spell. Also, the problem with Crane Game, kind of the big issue about all of this, is you probably want to put Sargeras in your control-oriented decks, but you can't put Sargeras in the same deck as Nemsy and Crane Game, so I think that immediately neuters this deck quite considerably. Tabletop Role Player I just think is a bad card, full stop. I think it's also the mini that you're going to generate from stuff like Botface, and you're going to be really sad to get it because it's basically a mini that is no good, no bueno. You may notice I'm not giving a rating to Malefic Rook here. That's because I'm giving that 4 stars. I'm also going to give Table Flip 4 stars as well. So I think then the alternate deck to this will be some sort of control handlock deck. And I think that's basically going to be what Control Warlock is right now. Control Warlock sits somewhere around the tier 2 region. You can use these cards with Sargeras. If you hit your face with a Malefic Rook, are you really that unhappy? You're a control deck, it's fine. You can heal it back up eventually, so don't worry about it. You can also use stuff like Fellstring Harp so that you don't take the damage, right? There's stuff to play around. I think Table Flip is very good for the handlock deck. I think overall, though, the handlock deck will sit around this tier 2 region. I don't think it's quite good enough to get into the tier 1 region. It doesn't really have this hard win condition, right? The real win condition of the current Control Warlock deck is almost like Fatigue. You're at some point going to play your... oh my god, I need the thing. The 5 mana Broken Spell. You're going to play that eventually. Symphony of Sins, so bad with names. You're going to play Symphony of Sins, you're going to mill 6 cards from your opponent's deck, which is a lot of cards to mill. You'll do 6 to all, that's another 6 damage, you'll do 6 to the face, and eventually your opponent will run out of cards to deal with this. So I think that is going to be a reasonable win condition, just not a tier 1 win condition. Also for Malefic Rook, I could 100% see this going into Sludge Warlock, which currently is a tier 1 deck, and I think will still be a tier 1 deck once the rotation happens. And this is despite it being nerfed, it's still hovering around this tier 1 region. I can definitely see that going to that deck. My other deck I think could be a thing. I actually think that might be a Zoo Warlock deck that doesn't use the sludges, or maybe has a minor dabble into the sludge package. And I think that's going to be really, really obnoxious. Not quite there yet, but pretty obnoxious. I think that could go in there. So, honestly, I think I'm underrating Malefic Rook. I think this might be a 5-star card, actually. But I've erred on the side of a little bit of, you know, safety for myself. I'm giving it 4 stars. Right, Wheel of Death, or Meme of Death. It is 5 memes out of 5, but actually that is only equivalent to 2 stars. Obviously, this card is a huge meme. It will see play, because it's a meme. Do I think it's a good card? No. I think it's a 1-star card, but it will see enough play to warrant it being a 2-star card. I think this will be a different deck from both the Handlock deck. I think it's going to be different from the Queen Lock deck. You're going to be running some more control cards. I think eventually the whole game plan will be build a hand that can survive for 5 turns, and you're probably going to put into that slide. I'm so bad with names. You're going to put in the legendary that copies your opponent's deck. You can tell I'm not a degenerate player, right? Because I can't remember his name, because I didn't play him that often. Tony. Tony, King of Piracy. You'll play Tony to fill your deck so you don't die to fatigue damage, and eventually, hopefully with your deck, plus, or your opponent's deck, plus your hand, you're able to deal with your opponent. Now, this is one of the first one of these videos I've recorded after, I think it's the second one. I've recorded after the preview stream. I didn't catch all of the preview stream. I am aware Wheel of Death did win a few games, but some of those were against a Whizbang deck, so I'm not entirely certain. I'm not convinced by it. I think it's too big a loss condition. Funnily enough, destroying your deck, not the best idea. And 5 turns for survival, pretty brutal. The final card here is Sketch Artist, which I've actually also given a 2-star rating to. There is a world I can see. There is a world where this maybe goes into an aggro deck. You might be saying, what are you thinking? Andalona Umorn, it's a 3-mana 3/3. It is a 3-mana 3/3. You're right, that's not particularly good. However, one of the spells this could fish for from the Shadow region is Monstrous Form, and that is seeing a lot of play in Sludge Warlock. It's a very aggressive card, lets you push a lot of damage to the face. I can definitely see a world where maybe people will try to put the Sketch Artist into your aggro deck to give you a draw of Monstrous Form, get a copy of it, and if you put the Monstrous Form onto a minion, suddenly Sketch Artist suddenly seems like a 4-mana 6/6 draw a card. That's pretty bonkers. Obviously, that's not quite the way the value proposition works. But I think it's good enough to see a little bit of testing. I don't think, though, it's going to be good enough to see play in stuff like Handlock. Most of those really, really good shadow spells are just too expensive. You maybe push yourself towards 11 mana, 11 cards in hand, right? You probably don't want like temporary forms of Twisting Nether though, right? So I actually think there will be a small niche this comes in. Also, watch this space. If there is ever another like really good shadow spell printed and you need to tutor for it, you can use Sketch Artist. Obviously, you can also tutor for your Wheel of Death, and maybe that does go into the Wheel of Death deck. But that deck's going to suck, so I think 2 stars is fair enough. Alright, Warrior Land is way, way more simple. They got a mech package. Inventor Boom, Testing Dummy, Fireworker, Boom Wrench, and Recommend Deckham. And let's be honest with you, the neutral card as well, what was his name? Oh, the Factory Assembly Bot, or whatever it's called, might as well be a part of this package, because it almost seems like it was a fit made in heaven for this deck. But we'll deal with that card later. Having seen all of the sets now, this was one of the first revealed classes. In fact, I think it was the first revealed class, right? The first revealed archetype I mentioned is the Testing Dummy, the 8 damage randomly split from this, hitting the critical point where that's enough damage to put enough pressure onto your opponents to beat them down with Death Rattles. Because obviously there becomes a potentially horrible state in the game where Inventor Boom pulls out 2 Testing Dummies, and you have to deal with 16 damage to the face, not including what stuff you get from the Boom Wrench. And I think the 8 damage from Testing Dummy and the rest of the set is actually enough to hit this critical mass. I don't think this will make a tier 1 deck, but it's going to go pretty close to it. I think it's going to be high in the tier 2 region. So I've given all of these cards 4 stars. I think every single one of them makes this Mech Warrior random damage deck. And Boom Wrench and Testing Dummy and Inventor Boom will be the big cards from this, as well as the Factory Assembly Bot for Smoke to the Face. There's then 2 other cards, Bot Face and Chemical Spill, which I think will actually make this package as well. I separated them off because I don't think you'll need to run them, but there is a very small package with Chemical Spill plus Gromash plus Bot Face plus Testing Dummy potentially, where you could cheat out one of these, minions. Dealing 5 damage is not the worst thing. For Bot Face, you'll get some minis from it. It'll guarantee that Bot Face will give you 4 minis, assuming your opponent kills you with damage. Testing Dummy will eventually go off a little bit sooner, so you don't really mind you lose the health. And if you put up Gromash, which I think is the big role, he will get his Enrage effect off, and he will do 10 charge damage. And I think this will be a big finisher for this deck. For those reasons, because I think Chemical Spill plus Gromash is going to be such a good combo, I've given both of these 4 stars. I think it'll go into that deck, and I think because you're going to want to run this combo, if you miss Gromash, I think Bot Face is not a bad reward. And there's actually some of the minis now. We've seen the full mini set like Shudder Block that I think potentially are pretty good, right? If you generate some of these random minis. Not all of them are terrible. Some of them are terrible. A lot of them are good. And I think in general, on the side of, let me call it the maxis and the minis, I think the minis are better than the maxis for the most part. So I think Botface will actually be a pretty solid value proposition. And this package will all be ran together with the mech package. Then we have Quality Assurance, which again could go into this deck. Could also go into just Taunt Warrior. I've given this 2 stars. I think you'll see play in the mech package, but I don't think it's going to be good enough for it. And I don't think Taunt Warrior is going to be particularly good either. This probably gets into the Taunt Warrior deck. They do typically try and run as few spells as possible because they normally run Magatha. And in fact, we had a card already whose name is completely escaped me. You know what? Preview window saved me. Which was Discover a Taunt Minion. Last Stand. We had that which doubled the stats, which is all the rage for Taunt Warrior, what it wants to do. They want to play the 5-mana spell to double all of your stats. They want to play Lothamar. And that card, Last Stand, doesn't see play in that deck. And I think they are pretty comparable, so yeah, 2 stars. Finally, we have Lab Patron and Safety Goggles. Both of them are gaining advantage upon having either armor or no armor, but gives you more armor. The only deck I can see these going into is Odin Warrior, and I think neither of them will go in there. I think Safety Goggles is bad, and I think Lab Patron, most of the time, is bad. Lab Patron may change depending on the quality of cheap mana-generating cards, and there are a few of them. If you play a Lab Patron and play a 1-mana armor-generating card, it is a kind of like 5-mana 6/6 combo. That's reasonable, but it's very close to Arena-esque. Obviously, you want a 0-mana card, which Safety Goggles would be really good for, but I don't think you want to hold yourself at no armor until you draw Lab Patron and Safety Goggles. I just don't think the combo is worth it. So I've given both of these 1 stars. That's all the classes done. Now we're going into neutral territory. I'm going to do the neutrals very slightly differently. I typically try and group these as archetypes. I'm just going to take them as the cards I think will be 5 stars, the cards will be 4, the 3, the 2s and 1s, and that's how I'm going to group them. So, 5-star neutrals. I think we have 3. Treasure Distributor, Playhouse Giant, and Ziliax Deluxe 3000. I don't think any of the other neutrals will be a 5-star card. Hot take. I think Treasure Distributor and Playhouse Giant will both go into this bouncy, drawy, water dancer rogue deck. And I think that's going to be a tier 1 deck, so 5 stars to both of those. Ziliax Deluxe is just going to find its way into so many tier 2 and probably some tier 1 decks that it has to be 5 stars. I think this is the Astalor of this set. He is going to be the face of the next year/2 years of Hearthstone, and a lot of decks will just run him as, why not, right? I need to run 3 more cards, we'll whack a Ziliax in there. And there's many iterations of it, and a lot of them give you pretty good value, so yeah, 5 stars. 4 stars is where things get a little bit more interesting. In there, I've got Tar Slime, Gift Wrap Whelp, Sing-Along Buddy, Caricature Artist, Origami Dragon, Joymancer Geppetto, surprisingly, and Factory Assembly Bot. Tar Slime is a 1-mana 2/3 taunt. If you are a deck that hasn't got great control tools, but you want to go into the late game, or a Druid, for example, you might want to consider putting a Tar Slime into your deck. as is a 1-mana 2/3 taunt. That's pretty good, right? Gift Wrap Whelp, I think, will go into every single deck with a Dragon archetype in it. I think it's also a bonkers 1-drop. It is a 1-mana 3/2. For Dragon Druid, effectively, 1-mana 3/2, insane. If I thought Dragon Druid or Dragon Priest was going to be a tier 1 deck, I would have given this 5 stars. I don't think it is. I don't think any of the Druid archetypes will be tier 1, which is part of the reason why both of these are in the 4-star range. Actually, fully enough, Singalong Buddy's also here, not because of Priest. I think Singalong Buddy's going to go into Button Druid, and actually really obnoxious in Button Druid. But again, I don't think the Button Druid deck is going to be tier 1 either. I think Druid's got a lot of decks that are going to be really good, but are just going to be like a cusp away from this top tier set. Caricature Artist, there's a lot of, key cards in people's decks that you would want a tutor for. This is a pretty decent tutor, and I think for that reason it is going to be in a tier 2 deck of some variety, right? I can't actually explicitly remember which one I put it in, but I definitely put it in a deck. In fact, I think I do remember now. I think I put it into Highlander Shaman, and I think Highlander Shaman is going to be pretty solid. And this is going to be one of the tutors for one of your big, really good value minions. I think the Shutterblock is in there, the Hagatha's in there, Holiday would be in there, so I think this card is pretty solid. Origami Dragon, I think, is actually the nuts. It's only because I don't think any control deck is really going to be in tier 1. With the exception of Warrior, which really at the end of the day is kind of a combo deck. You're waiting to play Odin and OTK your opponent. Because of the prevalence of OTK decks, combo decks, and I think Rogue is going to add to this list, I think Origami Dragon is going to be just like pushed down slightly from that. But the card is insane. Truly, truly insane. Really good card. I saw a decent amount in the Theory Crafting streams, and every time someone played it, I was like, that's a good card. Definitely going to go into Dragon Priest. It's definitely going to go into Dragon... I know I said Paladin, but it's definitely going to go into Dragon Druid. Yeah, really good card. In fact, it will also go into Highlander Dragon Druid. Very, very good card. Alright, Geppetto. Geppetto is currently usable, I believe, right? He's the early card release. Is he the early card released? I can't remember. No, he's not. He's not. It's Cauliflower. Whatever. I didn't see a lot of play from this guy on the Theory Crafting streams. I just don't believe there's a world where this card, which could potentially generate you a lot of value for certain classes, Druid, funnily enough, again, being one of them, where you could get a lot of 1-drops. I think people have Theory Crafted it could be pretty good into Hunter. It's just going to be a refill for like your aggro decks. Surely, eventually, this finds its way into a tier 2 deck, so I've thrown it in here. Finally, Factory Assembly Bot. This is just going to go into Mech Warrior. Mech Warrior will be tier 2, so by proxy, you have to be a 4-star card. Again, you might as well have been a Warrior card, to be honest with you, because I don't think you're going into any other deck right now. Alright, 3-star region. We have Card Grader and Origami Crane. That's it. Card Grader, I think, is going to be a card that may actually get into a tier 2 deck. May even get into a tier 1 deck, to be honest with you. It's one of these cards, and I've seen a few of the other creators who were at the Theorycraft event and were like, I need to put like a card into my deck. And people are like going, you know what? This Card Grader is not a terrible idea. Casting a spell while you're holding it is not an awful condition. Discovering a card from your deck is a better draw. So it's like it's a slightly understated 3-mana minion with draw a good card, because it's the card that you want at that point. So yeah, I think it's going to be a 3-star card. I think it's just going to slot into some decks. Never going to be the first choice of a card that you put in your deck. It's not strong enough as a tutor. But certainly if you can put minions in your deck and you're looking at this 29th, 30th card, put a Card Grader in. Why not? Similarly, Origami Crane, I think, could go into some sort of control deck archetypes. It's not as good as the Origami Dragon. It's better than the Frog, though. You definitely want it to take health rather than attack, in my opinion. It has Taunt on it. It's going to be annoying. I think some tier 3 decks surely will eventually run this. I've actually not run the numbers of what will run it. It may end up being a 2-star card, but I threw you into 3-star cards so that Card Grader would have some company. Alright, 2-star cards now. And there's probably some surprising cards in here for some people. Scarab Keychain, Clearance Promoter, Floppy Hydra, Observer of Mystery, Sweet and Snowflurry, Nesting Golem, Workshop Janitor, and Cauliflower the Artist. All in here. Right, some explaining to do. Scarab Keychain, firstly, I might be wrong on, because I've actually put it in my aggro hunter list for the opening day. So that might actually be a 4-star card, depending on how aggro hunter does. In general, though, I think it is an okay one-drop. It's not particularly aggressive enough, it's more value-orientated. And value-orientated decks are not going to do particularly well right now, because combo decks are going to be reigning supreme. So I put it into the 2-star region. I think it's something that will be tested in some aggro decks before dropping off. Again, I keep saying Druid might run this. Druid may run this, but they probably don't. It's not really comparable to the Cactus card that people are saying, like, oh my god, the Scarab Keychain, it's like the Cactus card. No, you don't. You get the 1/1 at first, and that's a pretty bad one-drop, right? That's a weak stat line for your one-drop, so it's not quite the same. Clearance Promoter, I think we'll see some testing in decks that are combo-orientated. Maybe the spell Druid deck. Discount some spells in your hand along with your Ensmalling. Pretty nice, right? I think it's actually going to prove to be just too slow overall as a package, and I don't think the combo decks will need that additional mana cheat. So I think Clearance Promoter won't get into that deck. And I was having a look at the other combo decks out there that might want to use mana cheat, for example, Rogue, and I don't think they'd put Clearance Promoter in that deck. So I think some people will test it, but it will prove to be worthless. Floppy Hydra, god, everyone loves this card. I love this card. It's really cool. Unfortunately, we've kind of got a precedent on this card already from Priest. I can't remember the name of the card. I can search it up while I'm talking about it. But we had this card in Priest, or we have this card in Priest, we still have this card in Priest, that once it's destroyed, it goes back into the deck and its stats increase. Now, it doesn't double, it goes up by +3/+3 at a time, I believe. And it does normally, it's Student of the Stars I'm talking about, by the way. I do put it into my Control Priest decks. Basically, if I ever get to a Control v Control matchup, that's my guarantee that I can go infinitely. I'll always have a card to draw. Obviously, if it gets silenced and destroyed, that happens. Floppy Hydra, better scaling when you get, more Death Rattles. It is really slow, though. So unbelievably slow, and that's the problem with Student of the Stars as well. It's simply too slow. There's also a decent amount of ways right now in the game to not kill stuff and just remove it from the game, aka Reno, aka Repackage, aka King Plush. There's a lot of options to spin stuff back into the deck instead of killing it. Also, if any class was going to make this effect work, it was either going to be Priest or Warrior. They are the classical, super control decks, maybe Warlock as well. And if Priest couldn't get this to work with Student of the Stars, no one else will get it to work with Floppy Hydra. There are some mean combos, and this is, again, part of the reason why it's in 2-star territory. Same with Nesting Golem. That Death Knight might copy the Death Rattle onto these cards, and you'll start shuffling copies of this into your deck, which I think will be the Floppy Hydra, and not the card you copy, by the way. And you'll have all these Floppy Hydras in your deck, and your floppy deck is fun, but you'll lose. Observer of Mysteries, I'm actually convinced, again, I think this is a 1-star card, but I'm kind of low-key convinced that Secret Hunter is going to be actually not god-awful. So I've given it 2 stars because I think it's going to be a tier 4 deck. I'm going to test it out. Hunter Secrets right now aren't that bad. I think, oddly, the Hunter Secret pool might be better than the Mage pool right now. And I can definitely see that, and it's mainly because of Ice Trap, that you play all these secrets, you get a board full of minions like with your tokeny Hunter deck, and your opponent just can't deal with it because the first spell they cast gets bounced back to the hand. Obviously, it's not as bad as Counterspell because you can play it again in the future. However, Hunter is really aggressive. You want to be clearing those boards up pretty literally split before they buff them, and God knows what else. So, because of that one reason, it really is just Secret Hunter. I think Observer of Mysteries I was willing to put into the 2-star region. You may be also saying, what the fuck are you doing with Sweet and Snowflurry in here? I think it's going to go into Elemental Mage. I think Elemental Mage is going to get hit very hard by the rotation, sadly. It's really bad that they're losing Frost Touch and Agewind. And I think this will be the replacement for Frost Touch and Agewind. You'll put a Sweet and Snowflurry in there instead. It will die. You'll play it, you'll get the 2 random frost spells and they'll send them to the face. It's not the die effect, it's the battle cry effect. And then you'll get the mini, you'll play the mini on the next turn, which is another turn of playing elementals, and then you'll smoke your opponent down in the face with frost spells. And I think that is okay. Is it better than Frost Touch? No, it's not. So, as I said, I think this will slot into tier 4, but gives it 2-star rating though for me. Nesting Golem maybe goes into some aggro decks. Let's be real though, I've put it here because I'm convinced that people will put it into Death Knight and Death Growl the effect. That's the only reason it's here. It's too much of a meme card to not see enough play to be 2 stars, so welcome to 2-star territory. Workshop Janitor is very similar to the Clown effect on the Infusion Rite, where you had Infuse 5, was it? Or Infuse 3? I think it was 5. Infuse 5 and you would draw 3 cards. That was a 5-mana 3/5 as well, so this has a better stat line, and arguably it's easy to proc, you just need a location on the field. Now, I say that, but a lot of the locations have rotated out, so some classes are going to be struggling to play this card. I'm not sure any class has access to 2 locations. Oh, actually, I think Warrior does, right? They still have Sanguine Swamp because I went to the core set. And they have the bad location. So yeah, I think because it's going to be so... It's going to be lower probability that you're going to draw the location, play the location, then have the Janitor up in time to draw 2 cards from it. I think there's just better options out there. I think there's better cards that just discover a card. And I think there's better draw engines. So I think people will maybe try it out, but it won't quite get in there. Maybe with Highlander decks as well, they might try it. But if you're running a Highlander deck, you have less locations, so... it's going to be really awkward. And then finally, Cauliflower. Cauliflower is the card that is basically the Thunderbringer of this set. You can test it out early, you can build your decks, you can meme with it, and I've not been convinced by any meme yet has really actually made a good deck. I've seen a lot of images of, 10 King... Well, not 10, but 7 King Crushes going on the field and going smoke, 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 smoke. What they don't show you in that, though, is the 12 other games where this didn't happen. I have tried to make Cauliflower work in Priest before. It drove me insane. I'm not convinced by the new cards that Cauliflower is going to be any better. I think if any class is going to abuse this, it's probably going to be either Druid or Hunter. Druid, if you can copy Alonius onto some tokens, could lead to some funny situations. But for that, you have already got the... I'm so bad with names cards. There's a neutral that copies minions anyway for 4 mana, so I think you would use that instead of Cauliflower. And also, it's so hard to... You have to make your deck morph into a very specific way for it to go off as you want it. And I don't think there's enough tools to selectively take cards from your hand, put them into your deck and that type of deal. So sometimes Cauliflower literally will just do nothing and your deck won't work, and you will cry. But it's a meme potential card, so 2 stars. Finally, we have 1 stars, and I have to put the 1 stars onto 2 different pages. We have Corridor Sleeper, Messmaker, Bucket of Soldiers, Cosplay Contestant, Plucky Paintfin, Lena Shop Manager, Nostalgic Initiate, Rumble Enthusiast, Nostalgic Gnome, and Nostalgic Clown. Okay, I do want to go through all of these. So, quickly speaking, Corridor Sleeper is just too slow. Messmaker is just too bad. Bucket of Soldiers, I don't think there's enough decks out there that can abuse its effect. If there was some sort of tribe on that, then maybe it would work. Also, Summoning 5 Things is a bit of a problem because if you want to prop the Death Rattle with another card, you run out of board space, right? So it's just too wide. Cosplay Contestant is just bad, your opponent can play around it. Plucky Paintfin maybe would have seen play for a tutor, but there's no good rush minions that have been printed. Now, maybe a tutor for your Ziliax, but there are other cards in other classes that are better to tutor for your Ziliax than Plucky Paintfin, so cry, cry, cry. Lena, I think, is the worst legendary maybe of the neutrals at the very least. Closer than worst neutral in the... the worst card... worst legendary in the set. I think it's not quite there, but it's in the bottom tier. At the end of the day, what is your best condition for this card? You play a 4-mana spell, right? That's the most obvious one. For 10 mana, you get a 3/3 and a bunch of random 4-drops. That's not good enough in Modern Hearthstone. The card I was comparing this to, oh my god, I'm so bad on names. It's the Death Knight card. Is it an 8-mana spell right now? That summons a bunch of undead. It's rotating out, I think, right? Is it 9? I'm so bad. I'm just so bad at Hearthstone. It's 9. The Scourge. I didn't even read the name, I just saw the picture and it procced it for me. The Scourge has a potential higher roll than Lena. Sure, sometimes you're going to get 1s or 2s, right? I don't know what the average cost of an undead is. I suspect, though, it's approaching 4, right? So for 1 less mana, you could play the Scourge, which gives you a small pool of minions. Lena, for 1 more mana, gives you just whatever you want, whatever random shit it is. Actually, I say whatever you want. It's probably whatever you don't want. And again, this summoning random minions is normally not a great effect because most good cards have battle cries, which are fast effects, and normally minions with battle cries are understated. So you're going to get understated 4-drops. Sure, maybe Lena lives. Maybe you bounce Lena back and do it again on multiple turns and eventually break your opponent's back. I'm just not convinced by it. Nostalgic Initiate, I think, is too late for its effect. I think its effect is fine. Compared to the original Initiate, where it had the benefit of it being a 1-drop and you could proc it pretty easily with a coin and go super aggressive, Nostalgic Initiate just comes up too late to be like this insane aggro card. It's pretty good, so I can definitely see some Zoo decks putting it in there. And actually, I don't think it's going to be the worst card to put into the Zoo deck. But I'm just not quite convinced by it. Rumble Enthusiast, I think, was going to be bad, in part because Demon Hunter is going to be bad. The obvious deck that this would have gone into is Naga Demon Hunter. Naga Demon Hunter is losing all of its, not all of it, but it's losing a lot of Naga and cheap spell support. And I think this is just too expensive to play this on top of your Sharpshooter. So 1 star. Nostalgic Gnome is too specific for the card draw. If it turns out there's a bunch of 4 health minions in the game, maybe it sees some play in there, because potentially it's like 5 mana, 5/5 draw 2, which is, what the Location Lord was. But it's just, I think it's more specific than the Location Lord, so yeah, I don't see it. Nostalgic Clown, I will concede I may get this wrong. This could reasonably go into the Bran Highlander Warrior deck. My only issue with that, this is kind of my issue with most of the Highlander decks, I think Play Death Knight is going to be actually giga bonkers, and if you're a Highlander deck that wants to get a Highlander card to trigger, you're going to cry playing against Play Death Knight. They lose very few cards on the rotation. There is no Seam Cleaner anymore, and that was one of the things you did for Bran. You could play your Seam Cleaner and then your Bran afterwards. This could have gone into that deck, though, as an alternate win condition, because it is Battlecry deal damage. It's not unreasonable in that deck that you're going to play a card that costs more than 5 mana as well. And obviously on the 1 mana mini, it's pretty easy to play something that costs more than 1. So, yeah, it could have got into that deck. I just don't think it will be a good enough deck. And also, I don't think the Archetype Full Stop is going to be good enough, so 1 star. The final 1-star cards are Forgotten Animatronic, Giggling Toymaker, Origami Frog, Wind-Up Musician, and I've accidentally put Plucky Paintfin in again. Sorry, Plucky Paintfin, I really think you're going to be 1 star. I'm just I'm stamping that point. Anyway, Forgotten Animatronic, I hope I'm wrong on. I love this card, I love the art, I love the theme of it. But I just don't see a world where it works in any of the decks out there right now. Giggling Toymaker, I think, is too slow with a Death Rattle. There was a reason why Giggling Inventor was good. It was a battle cry. You can kind of play around the Death Rattle a little bit. Also, times have changed, right? I think it's easier to deal with the Giggling Inventor effect, even, now than it was before. Origami Frog of the Origami series, I think, is the weakest one. I think more often than not, you want to take away health from your opponent's minion so that you can kill it. On the Origami Frog, sure, you can take away the attack of the minion, and then maybe you get enough attack that you can rush into your opponent's minion and kill it, and the frog stays on the board. But I think this is just too, niche a situation for you to consider. I honestly think the Crane may also be a little bit too niche. But it's not awful. Pretty nice arena card. Wind-Up Musician is just going to be simply too slow. I just don't believe it. I've seen some people theory crafting a hand buff paladin deck where you trade your minions back and you put the Wind-Up Musician in there with your tradable soldier or whatever he's called. That is just going to be unbelievably giga slow, so I don't believe it. And yeah, sorry, Plucky Paintfin. You've got both barrels this time. Now, obviously there's one big card I've been missing. Splendiferous Whizbang, the final neutral. I've given this, I don't know. I simply do not know. I've been having a look on the internet, and I don't think anyone's got a full definitive list of what all the Whizbang decks are. We did get to see some of them in action. I've not seen the entire Theorycraft stream again, so I may have missed some of these. My gut feeling, though, was generally the Whizbang decks are below average. Some of them, though, are above average. The Mage one seemed pretty insane, where you got cards that you could play for the mana cost. That led to some really funny situations, especially when Mage has a no-minion archetype, and every card in your deck is a spell, right? Equally, I saw some other ones. I think I was watching the Shaman one, and it looked pretty bad, which was cast 3 secrets. It was okay, but I think a constructed deck will beat it, so. And that's kind of where you want Splendiferous Whizbang to be, right? I'm sure they've done a lot of testing on this. Hearthstone team obviously don't want this to be a 5-star card because that'd be really stupid. If this is the best card in the game, Splendiferous Whizbang, all the Whizbang decks are 5 stars. No, that's how you lose money as a company. At least an electronic trading card game company. It kind of needs to sit there in this region where it's slightly below average. You can beat some people with it, so you could climb with this card. That incentivizes people that, you know, haven't got quite as much money as others to craft this legendary, and you can play Hearthstone, right? And then maybe that in the future gets them into it further down the line instead. They're going to get your wallet later. Not now, but later. So yeah, I think this is going to probably be like a 2-star card. That's like my gut feeling. 2 or 3 there or thereabouts. If it is a 3-star card, then actually this is a pretty good time to be a new player to the game. Just play the Whizbang deck. At 3 stars, hey, you're going to win like 50-50 games, right? There or thereabouts. Actually, now that I think about it, that's not how my system works. Ignore me, but it will be okay. Alright, that is all of the Whizbang Workshop cards. Finally, though, I want to deal with 2 other, like, mini type of sets. The first one is these 4 cards: Nemelia, Safe Pilot, Warsong Grunt, Footman, and Night Elf Huntress. These are all cards that are rotating into the core set that I've never seen played before in Hearthstone. They're completely new cards, and I wanted to give them a little rating. Nemelia I'm giving 4 stars to. I think this is actually kind of an insane card. If you're in a class that doesn't have good AoE damage, aka Druid, you can also argue Hunter as well if you want to play a bit of a slower Hunter game. This is the bee's knees. A minion that does like a AoE cleaving effect, and then death rattles after you've done that cleave to deal 2 to all. Like, that might be 6 damage to 3 minions and then 2 to all the rest. That's a pretty decent board clear, right? So, I mentioned that I wanted, oh my god, Spammy Arcanist. I was hoping that would rotate into the core set because I really enjoyed that as a neutral. It was like Minion Defile. It didn't rotate, spoilers, but I think Nemelia will take that spot. And I forgot the name of the card and I just said it. Spammy Arcanist. Spammy did see a little bit of play in some tier 2 decks, so I think this will, fill that void. The final 3 cards I think will all be 1-star, but I actually think they're all kind of interesting. Warsong Grunt, I think, is just too much of an arena card. It's just too much of a niche situation that your opponent needs to have a 3 or lower health minion that you rush into, you kill it. It doesn't kill you, and then maybe you can rush into another minion and kill it. And then obviously the ideal scenario from all of this is that you stay with like the 3-1 at the end or something, and your opponent has to trade into that again. I just don't believe it's going to happen. And it's at 5 mana, it's just a little bit too expensive for the cost. I've seen there's some memey stuff you can do with Footman, and again, this is kind of a watch this space. I don't think there's enough good stuff you can do to abuse immune minions right now. One that I've seen people talking about is Mishmash Mocha. As a 12 mana combo, and you can generate 12 mana combos right now in Hearthstone thanks to the audio bot and a coin. You could get a 12 mana, clear the entire opponent's board by using Mishmash Mocha next to Footman, which means Mishmash Mocha can't get killed, and it'll just continually attack your opponent's board until there is nothing left, leaving you with a ginormous attack minion with a pretty big health pool as well. I think it's a meme. I just think it's too much of a meme, so yeah, I've given it 1 star. And then Night Elf Huntress has to be 3 different targets. If it wasn't, this would be a 5-star card. Unfortunately, because it's only a 5 mana 3/3 where 3 damage goes to the face, 3 just go to 2 different enemies, I don't think it's good enough. It's pretty decent though. I think all of these cards were added. There is definitely a world where Nemelia, Footman, and Night Elf Huntress, I think, see a bit of play. I just don't think Warsong Grunt will ever see play. And Footman and Night Elf Huntress will be very specific scenarios. The final cards that I'm going to deal with now are the event cards for the 10th anniversary. These are cards that we've all got to play with right now. And I'm kind of cheating then, right? I have a good understanding of which of these gifts are doing well now. However, in 4 days' time, right? Actually, for you, it might be 3 days. Then the entire sets rotate out, right? So there's a lot of archetypes that are going to be dying. There's going to be new archetypes generating. So I thought it was worth giving a star rating of what I thought these cards were going to be. Because they're basically new out the box, right? Maybe not quite mint, but give me an 8.5 rating, please. Anyway, the way I'm going to just do this again is like 5-star, 4-star, 3-star. I think there are 2 cards here that are 5 stars. And they're going to be Valera's Gift and Hearthstone Brew. I think Valera's Gift will go into this combo rogue deck to generate tons of deadly poisons, and you're going to generate a giant weapon, and you're going to smoke your opponent down. And I think that's going to be a tier 1 deck. So Villara's Gift, for that sole reason that it generates deadly poisons, is going to go in there. There's also a world where there is a combo with the pirates instead, and you might need the backstab to kill your own pirates off to generate more board space. So it may also go into that variant of the OTK. So I'm giving it 5 stars. Hearth Stonebrew. The rumours are not true. I've played this card now. I don't know if it's actually come out yet in a video. It was pretty funny. I put this into a bunch of decks and just never played it. I found the niche, though. The niche is that you play a hyper-aggressive deck, you burn all the cards in your hand, you hit your opponent in the face, and then you play Hearth Stonebrew and hope that wins you the game. And I think that is legitimately going to be good enough. I think every aggro deck, probably for like a year, will run this card. I can see this going to the Pirate Rogue, like the more aggressive version rather than the OTK version, as that deck ran out of gas pretty quickly. And if you can just drop a Hearth Stonebrew on the board and regenerate a new hand, it's like a 6 mana draw 8. Is it 8 cards you get from it? I can't remember. No, you don't get the full hand, right? You get 8 cards. Whatever. It generates you a ton of cards for 6. It's bonkers. In 4-star land, I've got Jaina's Gift. I think this will go into Minionless Mage. Now, there has been some really polarizing takes on Minionless Mage. I've heard some people saying it is the... In fact, I've heard people saying they think Mage is going to be the worst class in the next rotation. I've heard some people saying it's going to be one of the best classes in the next rotation. AKA, no one knows! Because the game is in a really volatile state right now. But if Minionless Mage is a deck that is decent, this will get into that deck. I think it's going to be in a tier 2 region. It's 2 spells in 1 night for your Galactic Overlord Orb of Destruction, whatever it's called. You can smoke people in the face with a Frostbolt that can interrupt, like, attacking the face. And that's what Rogue is going to be doing. He's going to be attacking you in the face, maybe with weapons, so you might need to Frostbolt in the face. You may also want to just draw some cards with Arcane Intellect, or you might search for the Fireball for a win condition. So it's a pretty solid little gift. And in general, the way I value these gifts are... The gifts are good if they give you cards that you can't access anymore, like they're going to rotate out. Or it is worth the 1 mana... addition to the cost of the card that's in there. If it's cards in there that you could have just put into your deck and you probably don't want, like, a 3rd copy of it, then obviously the gift is pretty bad. Anyway, to continue down the line of gifts, I think Anduin's Gift and Uther's Gift I've given 3 stars to. Anduin's Gift could probably go into most Control Priest decks. It's probably going to find its way into the... I am so bad with names. The Raza deck, because it's a cheap spell that generates you potentially another cheap spell to refresh your button again. Getting access to another, like, mind control type thing as well is pretty good. If there's any really big minions out there that are just impossible to remove, Control Priest might have to run this card to mind control the annoying minion. I can see it. And then for Uther's Gift, I think Paladin's going to slow down a little bit. They really lose a lot of their early game tempo. And I think the game now where it was always scary to leave a minion on board versus Paladin, right? Just like a single minion. You always have to go like that extra step beyond to kill it. And that meant sometimes you would run out of resources eventually versus Paladin, and Paladin would smoke you in the face. Without the 1-drops, without Garden's Grace, the threat kind of goes away from that. So I think I'll go more mid-rangey if I'm going to guess for Paladin. And in mid-range Paladin land, you always run like a quality consecration, right? And one of the downsides of a quality consecration, it was a great board clear, but it was a 2-card board clear. I think you can definitely slot Uther's Gift into that deck, so that if you have either the equality or the consecration, you can generate the other version with the gifts for the board clear. I think the 1 mana added cost on that isn't too bad. Consecration in the relative recent time span of Hearthstone was 4 mana. It got buffed to 3, and I definitely think you would still play that at, or you'd consider playing it at 4 mana in these mid-rangey decks, so I think that's fair enough. The 2 stars I've given here are to Thrall's Gift and Malfurion's Gift. We're about to lose Wild Growth from the rotation, so if you want to generate ramp with Druid, good cheap ramp, you're going to have to use Malfurion's Gift for it. I think I even saw in the Theory Craft stream, don't quote me on this one by the way, I'm sure someone played this and generated a 2-mana Wild Growth, like the pre-nerfed version. If that's the case, like you're going to get it pre-nerfed, like when it rotates into the wild, it's going to become 2 again, which I don't know if it was the case. That's actually a pretty good deal, right? So Malfurion's Gift may literally go into most Druid decks. Also, Swipe can go face, of course, so if the spell damage Druid deck needs another spell damage card, and Swipe is a pretty good AoE card as well for that, it may actually just go into spell damage Druid. I think my iteration of it didn't run the Malfeorin's Gift, which is why I've not given it like 4 stars or 3 stars. But it's a pretty good card. Similarly, Thrall's Gift, they're losing Bloodlust, right? He's rotating out the core set. I don't think there's many aggro Shaman decks out there right now. The Totem deck is going to get completely destroyed regardless of Bloodlust. But if you can put together some sort of aggro Shaman package, you might have to use Thrall's Gift to generate your Bloodlust to kill your opponent's face. Would you play 6 mana Bloodlust if you were desperate? So I snuck it into the 2-star region. The final 4 cards I've given 1 star to. I think Illidan's Gift, they are... I think all of these will be cards that you can put in your deck, right? Chaos Strike is staying in core. Chaos Nova is rotating into core. I can't remember about Fell Barrage, actually. Maybe that rotates out, but I don't think that's worth a 1 mana added cost to. Rexar's Gift is fun. You get all the shots, potentially. I think there are better cards to put into Hunter, let's put it that way. I'll be kind. Gul'dan's Gift, I think, is one of the worst gifts in the game. You can put Mortal Coil, Siphon Soul, and Twisting Nether into your deck already. And a lot of people don't put those cards into their deck already, therefore the gift won't see any play. Arthas's Gift generates you either like, one of the Unholy Runes, the Frost Runes, or the Blood Runes. I think it's an okay card. But, again, it's probably more likely to go into one of the control decks. I don't think Blood will be a deck after the next rotation. I do think Blood Unholy might be a deck. Maybe they slot it in, but I don't think so. I think there's better removal in that class than generating a Death Strike from Arthur's Gift for 1 more mana. Not convinced. And similarly to Gul'dan's Gift, Garrosh's Gift suffers the same thing. These are all cards you could just put into your warrior deck. Anyway, most don't put Execute into their deck. Some do put Shield Block into their deck because of Odin. I think there are other better armor generators than the 1 mana additional cost of Shield Block, like a 3 mana Shield Block. If there weren't, then Garrosh's Gift would probably go into Odin Warrior. And actually, my list of Odin Warrior right now that I think will be the tier 1 list doesn't run Brawl. But maybe it does just sneak in there as like this catch situation where if you don't need the Shield Block but you really wanted the Brawl, maybe use Garrosh's Gift instead of the 1 mana addition is fine because you want to go late game anyway. Anyway, that's everything. It's done. I've done all the star ratings. I can stop now, right? You don't want to see me do one for the core set, right? Right? Please say no. Anyway, if you do want to see me one do for the core set rotations, maybe I'll consider it, but it's a lot of faff. And generally speaking, most of the core set cards I don't think are going to be that interesting, to be honest with you. At least for the neutrals. The classes, some of them are pretty interesting. I might do one more video again. I think I did this for Showdown in the Badlands and the set before that, where I'll give you what I think are the 10 most impactful cards, I think is the way I called it, of the set. So yeah, we'll probably do one of those videos, and I'll try and get that out before the set releases on the 19th, I believe. So, anyway, I'll see you next time. Bye!